And for more now on what to expect from COP29, I'm joined by Changhua Wu, who is chair of the Governing Council of the Asia-Pacific Water Forum. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sir. Let me start by asking you, what are some of the key outcomes you're hoping for from COP29?
But coming into COP29, the presidency, the Azerbaijan government has a very clear agenda, which is to deliver the new something called NCQG and the new collective quantified goals for climate finance. And that's why it's called, the climate finance COP this year. And it's very focused agenda. And throughout, the last 2 days already, there have been some progresses made already since the first day. There are some major agreements actually adopted around the carbon market, and which is potentially actually could help mobilize some, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars actually from developed countries to developing countries to help mitigate climate change and enhance adaptation capability. But in the meantime, actually, now focus is really around this is sort of the other funding sources there, which are the key part of it. So my expectation, hopefully somehow by the end of the sort of 2-week negotiation, there will be a consensus, really delivering the new collective quantified goals with more clarity in terms of how much money on the table committed, who provided the money. And in the meantime, throughout the negotiation process, some specific tools, instruments, rules will be agreed upon in order to really enhance the access to those capitals as well.
A lot's been made about the Paris Agreement. What sort of progress has been made towards those targets? Because there has been quite a bit of lag.
The gap is very clear. I think through the UNEP, United Environmental Program, unnecessary emission gaps report every year, which assess the progresses, all the countries have been making. I think the gap is huge. Rather than decreasing the emissions there, the global emissions have been continuing to rise. And then if you look into, say, what's happening, the reasons there is because of fossil fuels rather than countries committed to transition away from fuels last year. Actually, we're definitely putting more investment into fossil fuels. So the emissions have been going up. Then if you look at adaptation gap there, the gap is huge there as well. So there's generally, greater sense of urgency, particularly according to the recent data from World Meteorological organizations and other science agencies. They're basically saying, we are living in a much more intensified climate crisis these days. So that adds a sense of urgency in terms of the COP29. Hopefully somehow, leaders or representatives from all the countries will recognize the sense of urgency, really put their efforts focusing on how to work together collaboratively and collectively and deliver the real result.
Yeah, we keep hearing about the dire consequences if there isn't immediate action taken. Moving on, a major topic at COP29 is climate finance. How do you see the commitment to mobilizing $100 billion per year for climate action progressing?
Well, that's pretty much the topic of the day, and also probably one of the most challenging questions on the table today, fingers crossed. If you look at history, if you look at 2009, when this $100 billion every year was sort of included into the international climate governance system there in Copenhagen, and then finally everyone adopted or endorsed this sort of decision in 2015 in the Paris Agreement, and it's about mobilizing financial resources by rich countries to reach $100 billion every year between 2020 and 2025. And if you look at all the numbers recently, only 2022 was the year when finally that number was reached there. So learning from the lessons and the experience, we know how challenging that could be. And now today, with the current situation, with the new U.S. presidential election results, as well as many other complications, inflations and economic recessions there, particularly many developed countries, we know it's becoming more and more challenging for rich countries to honor their commitment. But somehow we'll see. And because G77 plus China at COP29 have already put on the table a number, $1.3 trillion every year by 2035. I think that becomes really, really clear and also reasonable number. Because developing countries needs the financing to help, transition from fossil fuels, but in the meantime, really adapt to climate change because the crisis actually is intensifying. And so the negotiation just started, and we start to recognize the challenging situation because obviously, countries, blocs are not agreeing with each other. Particularly rich countries are not agreeing to this particular proposal from developed countries. So fingers crossed.